Oh, hello and welcome to What Are We Talking About with Jamie Jakes. I am him, and we are going to reveal my power rankings for today with my group of brilliant football minds, all based out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Mr. Anthony Ramos, first time calling into the show. Looking great on that camera. Mustache is looking absolutely spectacular. You were on the Monday night stream last night. A Chargers fan, as you can see in his bio. Just coming off a loss. Brave of you to show your face on my channel. Were you the lady last night
and you just shaved your head before this?
Look, man, before we start talking about the Chargers and everything, I think it's very important to go ahead and just realize that this loss doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things, because these are both teams that are just going to lose in the first round of the playoffs if they get in anyways. So it was really just kind of a bragging rights kind of thing. And yes, we lost that. No, I'm not apologizing for anything I said about the Cowboys.
Good to see you too, Anthony. Mr. Miles Francis.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Mr. Miles Francis, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. I don't think anyone here should be talking any smack when we get to our gambling podcast here later. We are
correct.
All trash. We are all Chargers on this podcast.
Hell yeah. We are the Chargers of sports gambling, but we still have a good time talking about it. We also preview the games, and we just recommend bets. You know, we're professional fantasy football players, obviously. We are not professional gamblers in the sporting realm. It's a lot harder to make money that way anyway. Someone who knows all about that, Mr. Andrew. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. Back from my hiatus. Apparently, it's illegal to be a lot lizard in Dallas.
Is it? I feel like I see them all the time. Well, if you ever need someone to bail you out, Mr. Andrew.
His sports gambling went extra bad, apparently.
Oh, yeah. Trust me. Yeah.
Yep. Sometimes you got to do to make ends meet. Talking about power rankings, though, NFL power rankings. Today, we are going to start from number 5, and then we're going to go up to number 1. Then we're going to go 6 to 10, and then we're going to go bottom 5 in the league. The top 10 rankings, the top criteria, the only criteria is which team I think is most likely to win the Super Bowl. So not necessarily how good the teams are now, how likely they are to win the Super Bowl at the end of the season. Same thing for the bottom 5. Those bottom 5 teams are most likely to end the season in last place in the NFL, theoretically having the first overall pick if they don't decide to trade it before then. Are you guys ready?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Huzzah! We'll get after it, and we are going to start here at 5 on my list. I have the Philadelphia Eagles, and this is mainly a concern when what's the first thing you need if you want to win a Super Bowl? You got to have a quarterback, right? Jalen Hurts not playing well this season. He's doing all right in yards per pass attempt. He's 10th in the league with 7.2 as somebody's dog squeaks something in the background. But listen to this, 7 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions. Now, of course, he's had, rushing touchdowns that would kind of outweigh those 7 touchdown passes. That's concerning. Defensively, they're not super dominant either, which kind of puts them a little bit below. Bills are 4th on my list. A little bit lower down on the list than they were the week prior. Reasons I am concerned is their defense is not playing well, and neither is Josh Allen. Their defense is giving up 5.4 yards per carry. ETN and Saquon the past 2 weeks really took it to them. So that defensive line is really trending in the wrong direction, which I don't like to see when I'm trying to predict Super Bowls. And Josh Allen has just not been super impressive. He has thrown for a lot of touchdowns. Haven't seen quite the wheels out of him that I feel like we're used to seeing. Of course, he's being a little bit more conservative. Still got to be a little bit concerned about what's going on over there between him and Stephon Diggs. Niners are 3 on my list. They were number 1 in my power ratings last week. They lost last week to a backup, an XFL quarterback playing for the Cleveland Browns. Does that necessarily mean next week they're not going to be the second best team in the NFL? No. But what is the 49ers' Achilles heel is injuries. They're not injury resilient. And if they have injuries to one or two of their top guys, feels like the whole team crumbles. And I feel like that's what we saw in, you know,
both.
What's that?
In this case, it was both. Both of like their top guys went, or two of the three of their top guys went down.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about, of course, Christian McCaffrey went down with an oblique, and Deebo Samuel also went down in the game. They both did not finish the game. Offense didn't look great. Cleveland Browns, you got to give them credit. Spoiler alert, that their defense really is potentially like a transcendent defense, potentially one of the, like a historic level of defense that we're kind of looking at. Granted, they've stayed very healthy too, but you can't be losing to PJ Walker, you know,
Wow.
and me keep you in the top of the rankings. Brock Purdy, for the record, is playing like the second best quarterback in the league right now. We might cover that a little bit more in the future. Their defense, rushing wise, is very average. They're giving up 4 yards per carry, which is around the middle tier of the NFL in defense. But they are still third in passing yards per attempt on defense. So their defense can stop the pass, just not necessarily the run. Number 2, the Miami Dolphins. Their defense gives up 4.1 yards per carry and 6.6 yards per passing attempt, which is very middle tier in the NFL. But why are they number 2? They're number 2 because they rank first in both of those offensive statistics, yards per carry and yards per pass attempt. First in the NFL, kind of a transcendent offense. Not a complete team by any means. I would say probably the Niners and the Bills are more complete teams than the Dolphins. But that Dolphins offense is just so unbelievable.
It's like a create a player where you put all your stats into just one category.
It literally is. And, you know, the yards after catch that the wide receivers, particularly Tyreek Hill on that team, is really what elevates the team above all else offensive-wise. Their running backs are obviously extremely explosive. And they're a team that's injury resilient, unlike, and this is kind of what in my head put them ahead of the 49ers, is we've seen the 49ers grab a couple injuries, and we've seen the Dolphins grab a couple injuries, at least momentarily, temporarily. And the Dolphins, you know, Tyreek Hill goes down, Jalen Waddle goes down, Achane goes down. It doesn't matter. They're still the number 1 offense in the league, running and passing the football. And it's just really, really impressive. So that's why I have them at 2. Let me tell you about the number 1 team, and I think you guys know where I'm going with this. They were 5th in my power rankings last week. They jump all the way to first place with another huge road win, their 3rd huge road win of the season. They've got 5 wins. They've got 1 loss. Okay, man, it's the Detroit Lions. And as someone who grew up in Detroit, as someone who has been a Lions fan his whole life, I thought I was being pretty reasonable last week, putting them at 5. And I think I'm being pretty reasonable this week, putting them at number 1. What else do you want me to do? There's no more undefeated teams. We just saw the 49ers lose to PJ Walker and the Browns. How am I going to put the Lions behind the Niners at this point? You know, we saw the Dolphins get blown out. They have a middle-tier defense, not nearly as good as the Lions' defense. The Lions are an entirely whole team, a complete team, starting with Jared Goff. Yards per pass attempt, you know, that's my favorite stat because it kind of unmuddies the situation. Tua's still ahead, and then it comes Brock Purdy, and then it comes Jared Goff, number 3 in qualifying quarterbacks. I think we're seeing a potential MVP season out of Jared Goff. Just the ball placement. He doesn't have quite the weapons that Tua has. He doesn't have the weapons that Brock Purdy has. And he's really and that's why they're so injury resilient, is because he can really carry this team on his shoulders. And that's kind of what we saw this week against the Buccaneers on the road. Jared Goff, just whenever they needed a third down conversion, he just whipped the ball in the spot, got the first down, never felt like the game was even close to ever being out of hand. Jared Goff, 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, by the way. Also, the real yards per attempt leader, Keenan Allen, with 49 yards per attempt. Then Mike White, Drake London, Malik Willis, Drew Lock, Brian Hoyer, then Tua Tagovailoa, Brock Purdy, Taysom Hill, and Jared Goff. Taysom Hill with 3 passing attempts this season so far. So just some other extra fun stats to lighten the load there a little bit for you. Lions, second in rushing yards per attempt defensively, only have given up 3 touchdowns on the ground this season. And that's been the big surprise. I thought the Lions were maybe a year out roster-wise, but when you see guys like the new corner, I believe his name is Jerry, just go from a backup, getting picked on, Jerry Jacobs, going from a backup to getting picked on constantly in week 2 to week 3 to getting basically a game-sealing interception in week 5, and then just turn into a lockdown corner in week 6 against pretty high-powered Tampa Bay passing offense. Losing guys like Brian Branch, losing guys like injury resiliency is what I'm talking about. Losing guys like CJ GJ on the back end, and it affects them maybe for one game, and then just guys just fill in. So either this coaching staff is doing an incredible job getting these guys ready, or the Lions had a lot more depth than I think we thought they did leading up into the season, because they've lost guys on the offense too. David Montgomery has gone out for a few games already. Hasn't been an issue for the Lions. They can still run for touchdowns. They are 6th in yards per reception on defense as well. So they can stop the run amazingly. They can also stop the pass on defense. It is a complete team in that they can win in multiple ways. Like the Dolphins, they can win in a lot of ways, but the Lions can just run the clock out on you. They can just play ground and pound football and just burn 6 minutes off a clock at the end of the game after a few timeouts are burned by you. And they can also play from behind. Jared Goff is playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I just think Super Bowl should be expected at this point for the Detroit Football Lions. I'll throw it to you, Andrew, first. My order of the top 5: Lions, Dolphins, Niners, Bills, Eagles. What do you think? Did I miss anybody out? Did I put somebody too high?
I want to say pump the brakes on the Lions, but at the same time, you got the Bills way too high. After they lost Milano, I forgot the defensive tackle out Torres Peck, but that was their best defensive lineman, and they lost Tre'Davious White. This is a defense that now could probably be the bottom end of the league. They don't have a lot of issues. Like, I don't see them surviving at the first round of the playoffs. There's no way. I just feel like they're out. And their offense hasn't been the same. They have no rushing attack whatsoever. Everything is Allen to Diggs. They have no secondary playmakers, no deep threat. I mean, they
got Gabe Davis.
Yeah, Gabe Davis.
Come on. I mean, they got Gabe Davis.
He has like 3 good games a year, dude.
Yeah, I think
he's already
used up 2 of them.
Yeah, he's already had 2 good games, so he's only going to have one more good one. And that's how the logic works. Yeah. Josh Allen, 7.7 yards per attempt, 13 touchdowns, 6 interceptions.
Yeah, but like,
putting the Eagles ahead of them makes me feel dirty. What do you think? I put the Chiefs ahead of them, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs haven't been playing great either.
So who do I put the Bills behind is what I'm asking you. Ravens, Bengals, Seahawks, Browns, Cowboys. Who do I put the Bills
I'm going to
behind?
have to go with I think the Bengals. They're about to get hot right now. The Bengals are about to get hot.
Okay, go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
They're on the upswing. 3-3 right now, clawed back, won just a street fight in Cincinnati on Sunday. Bye week this week. Another week for Joe Burrow to get healthy. T. Higgins sort of his rib issue. This is a team that could be taken off soon. You want to be getting on this train right now, guys. I'm telling you.
I don't hate it at all. We will get to the Bengals here in a second. Not such a big mix-up in the back end of my top 5, which is why we started this way. But yeah, Anthony, what do you think?
I don't like that the Bills are in the top 5, just because I agree with Andrew. The Bills have been playing like dog shit.
Their defense. I think I did say this stat: 5.4 yards per carry defensively is what they're giving up. That's not a sustainable way to win Super Bowls. Go ahead.
And I will say with the Lions, they should be top 5, absolutely. Number 1, I don't think so. My only reasoning why is because if you look at who they've played and who they've beat, it's not anything.
They've only beat the defending Super Bowl champions in their house on opening day. Yeah. Who have they beaten, Anthony? The Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead.
Okay. That's a good win, yes. And then they lost to the Seahawks in OT. They beat the Lions, the Packers, the Panthers, and the Bucks.
The fact that one loss was in OT, I think, actually strengthens their argument. One
loss in OT and Miles, to your point, they had a -3 turnover differential that game. They had 2 fumbles lost and they had 1 interception in a week 2 game against a Seahawks team that I think is a top 10 team in the league. They're my number 9 team. Spoiler alert on my list. They've gone into Tampa against a red hot Baker Mayfield, and that defense made him look terrible. They go into Lambeau. Granted, to be fair to you, Packers not the same this season, but Lambeau's still Lambeau, and this is still the Detroit Lions we're talking about going into Lambeau, which is just an indication to me it's not the same old Lions. It's the brand new Lions. It's a new team. Going back to, so Anthony, who would you put number 1 over the Lions? You got Dolphins, Niners, Bills, Eagles, and you already said you don't like the Bills being that high. So who would you put ahead of the Bills?
Ahead of the Bills, I still would say the Chiefs. The Chiefs have
That's fair.
The Chiefs do have a habit of kicking it in late in the season.
Yeah.
They have a habit of playing whenever they need to play and really winning games that they should win. They're gonna fuck off in the beginning of the season. That's pretty normal for them.
They do.
I still have the 49ers at the top, even though they have lost, just because I think if the 49ers are healthy, there's no team in the NFL that can beat them.
Yeah, but Anthony's also the type of parent that doesn't really punish his kids. It's like that new age thing where there's no consequences for your actions.
I'm a Chargers fan. I punish myself, dude. That's literally all I do. But
I mean, the Browns defense is great.
Yeah.
The Browns defense is great, but
no, they are. Yes,
you can't be losing to PJ Walker and staying in the top in number 1. It should have been a cakewalk for this team, even with the injuries.
But people will come out and say they lost 2 of their star players and all of a sudden they're not a good team. Name any team that loses 2 of their star players.
The Miami Dolphins.
And the Detroit Lions.
Okay, dude. Not the Detroit Lions.
Brian Branch, CJ GJ were out for this game. Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery was out for multiple games. Amon-Ra St. Brown was out for a whole game. And it just became a Sam Laporta, Josh Reynolds game. They're injury resilient, outside of quarterback, of course, which, you could say that about every other team in the NFL. But the Lions and the Dolphins have lost their top guys. And I think, so do you have the Dolphins ahead of the Lions?
No, I have the Lions at second. The Lions, I would have number 2. The Lions, I would have number 2. The 49ers, I would have number 1 right now. I would love to see them in the NFC Championship. I think that would be a really great game. But if it came down to
my tickets right now,
both of them, if they both have healthy squads, I got to pick the 49ers in that situation right now. So I think the 49ers could definitely squeak out a win against the Lions if it came down to it. That's my reasoning as to why I'm putting them above.
And you said the Chiefs ahead of the Bills. Fair enough. I love it. Great take, Anthony Ramos. Miles Francis, I'll leave it with you, buddy.
Sure. I've got 2 places I would change it up. My first instinct, too, is the Bills falling out of the top 5. But then as I looked over the list, There is not another 4-2 team that I would put over them. And the Chiefs haven't signed the referees for the rest of the season. They are still on a temporary contract. Until we finalize that, I couldn't put them there. But I would switch Buffalo and Philadelphia. I'd drop Buffalo down one spot, put Philly in that 4th place spot. On the other end of the spectrum, the Lions, your criteria for this was most likely to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, it's really hard to find anything bad about this Lions team right now. And just one more bonus in their favor. If you look at their conference, they have a cakewalk to the playoffs.
And their schedule, their regular schedule is super soft too. They're probably
they are
hardest
going
game.
to be a well-rested, good working team going into the playoffs. Arguably, other teams that they're probably going to end up against will be coming off of more work, harder play, harder games, where they will just kind of be able to rest their starters and really coast into that first round after the bye or after the wild card round.
Yeah, hilarious that we're at Miles, by the way. Hilarious that we're already just like check marking the Lions into the divisional round of the playoffs.
I mean, not officially, but holy shit, dude. Look, I mean, they don't have to worry about the Bears. They don't have to worry about the Vikings. The Packers arguably might make some comeback as they come off the bye week. I feel like Jordan Love has a lot of potential if he can stop making so many interceptions.
It's going to be in Detroit. That place is going to be so loud. They already won in Lambeau.
Going to be tough for them to really make a comeback, but it really doesn't look like anybody in their conference, in their division, has a real chance at turning their season around to be a top competitor.
So based on my power rankings, they only have one top 10 opponent left on their schedule. That's next week at Baltimore. Then Raiders, Chargers, Bears, Packers, Saints, Bears, Broncos, Vikings, Cowboys, I'll be there, and Vikings. So, yeah, very, fluffy schedule going forward, especially if you're churning like the Lions are right now. And who would be your other team that you would mix around, Miles?
That was it. It was the switch of Philly and Buffalo, and then I just wanted to contend with what Anthony had said about the Lions, because they're injury resilient. They're playing well. Goff is having his best year that I've seen ever out of him. He's actually taken like a real leadership role on that team too. It's kind of cool to see a veteran play up to the level that you had hoped he would at one point.
Yep. And Bills, Eagles, flipping them, I don't mind it. My whole deal with the whole situation is just Josh Allen's playing a lot better than Jalen Hurts. So, it was a tough decision for me to make at 4 and 5, but that's the way I went.
Yeah, but you're not accounting for the tush push, bro.
I'm always accounting for the tush push. Miles Francis, how dare you say something like that about me? Moving on to 6 to 10, I have pretty standard. I think exactly the thing I had with a little bit of a mix up at the end. Chiefs. They won. It wasn't impressive. Hasn't looked impressive. Mahomes averaging 7.1 yards per attempt, passing 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, playing like a very average quarterback in the NFL. Granted, I have him this high because I believe in Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes will figure out how to turn it around. But it feels like they need another weapon on offense. Maybe that's Rashee Rice. He seems to be like the second best weapon on that offense.
Don't forget they're losing Taylor Swift this week.
They are losing Taylor Swift. Yeah, well, and that goes kind of towards your referee logic, Miles. They're going to lose Taylor Swift. They're not going to have the Swifties watching. They're not going to want to keep these Swifties happy, and they don't care about the Chiefs anymore. But yeah, we got after the Chiefs. We have Chiefs, by the way, defense playing extremely well. Another defense that's playing extremely well, the Baltimore Ravens, would be my number 7. On the list, Lamar Jackson feels like he's a guy right now who can lead this team to a Super Bowl and win it if all things go well. After them, the Bengals, who is probably going to be a little bit higher on some of your lists. We already know that one of you like the Bengals more than me. I just got to see it from Joe Burrow. I think the Seahawks are a really good team who they just beat. who Seahawks I currently have 9. Didn't downgrade them for losing to the Bengals, who I already had scheduled as a better team. And then in 10th, with a chance to win the Super Bowl, slim as it may be, the Cleveland Browns. They beat the Niners. It was a weather-ishy, weather sort of kind of game. Wasn't that bad. Rained for like maybe a half a quarter. The Browns defense is looking historically good. And that's really my only belief in the Browns at the point. Still feels like the team is in constant turmoil with Coach Stefanski at the helm. Coach Stefanski does have technically, Coach Stefanski never won a playoff game because he had COVID during the playoffs. If he would have just taken Pfizer, like Travis Kelce would have said, instead he went with Moderna, and look where he ended up on the sidelines with COVID during the only playoff win where the special teams coordinator filled in as the head coach. He came in for the divisional round and lost to the Chiefs in a close game where Patrick Mahomes got knocked unconscious, sort of, and Chad Henne came and dominated the Cleveland Browns defense. Anyways, Cleveland Browns offensively in turmoil. If Deshaun Watson comes back and he looks like he did in week 3, which was like a top 10 quarterback, if that just magically happens, coming off of this shoulder injury, Browns could win the Super Bowl. Their offensive line is still playing good enough. They didn't have Joel Bitonio last week. They still beat the Niners. Amari Cooper is definitely like a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL this season. Jerome Ford can get it done. And this defense is just so dominant that I think the sky's the limit for this team. This defense might just, like the Patriots defense did, probably like 8 years ago or at this point or whatever, whenever they carried the Patriots to the Super Bowl. I think we might see the same thing out of the Browns. So that for my 6 to 10, Chiefs, Ravens, Bengals, Seahawks, Browns. Andrew, I'll let you start. What do you think?
I think, the Browns at 10 is fair. This defense reminds me of 2000 Ravens, a team that also was in offensive turmoil. They actually went 4 straight games without scoring an offensive touchdown, which ended up with them replacing their quarterback twice, I think, and they ended up settling on Trent Dilfer. So things are trending up for the Browns, if you believe in historically great defenses. I think the Cowboys need to be on there instead of the Seahawks. I know they have a very slim chance to win. In fact, it's like barely above 0, but they just have enough talent on that team to knock off one of these other teams in your top 10. I don't know. I hate the Cowboys because I'm a fan, and I hate saying that they have a 0.01% chance of winning a Super Bowl, but the team has a lot of talent. I give them that.
Dak Prescott, 7 yards per pass attempt. That's worse than Geno Smith, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, tied with Sam Howell. Oh. Dak Prescott, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and he is the reason that I had to keep the Cowboys out of my top 10. I wanted to slide them in there, but I just couldn't find any space with them because I am a bit more of a believer in what's going on in Seattle. When the criteria is winning the Super Bowl, have a real tough time putting the Cowboys, at least at this point, in that conversation, especially with what we've seen with Dak in the playoffs. I mean, Jared Goff made it to a Super Bowl, right? Did I misremember that? So I got to kind of see it out of the quarterback. Same reason why Chiefs are so high, even though they're playing so poorly on the list, is we've seen Patrick Mahomes win a couple, which goes a long way when we're talking about chances to win a Super Bowl. Anthony, or did you finish your thought, Andrew?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Anthony, what do you think?
Get rid of the Browns at number 10. Put the Jaguars at number 10. I like how the Jags look this year.
I kind of respect it.
My reasoning is pretty solid. You look at the Jaguars. This has been a team that hasn't done anything since I've been alive. I'm 27 years old. I've never seen the Jaguars do shit. And obviously last year, yes, they did beat the Chargers in the playoffs. I'm not stupid. I do remember that. But this year, although they have had some hiccups, I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen.
yes, they lost to the Chiefs, and yes, they lost to the Texans. Both very respectable losses because the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and the Texans are looking like a very reformed football team right now. But also, the Jags beat the Bills, and they also beat the Falcons. Yes, like the Falcons aren't really doing anything this year, but I love how Travis Etienne is looking. I love how Calvin Ridley is looking. I love Christian Kirk. I love how their offense is looking. Their defense can definitely use some improvement, but I think the trajectory that the Jaguars are in right now, it's almost blasphemous to not put them in the top 10 and put the Browns over them. I think you might be thinking a little homer with that right there.
So Jags defensively 10th worst in the league in passing yardage per attempt. Trevor Lawrence playing extremely poor. I have to say I agree with you about the pieces that they have. I love Christian Kirk. I love Calvin Ridley. I love ETN. He's playing extremely well. But when your quarterback's only averaging 6.8 yards per attempt in an offense that feels that explosive, you got to start questioning what he's being taught, or is the offensive line protecting him well enough? 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions for Trevor Lawrence. And, this Browns defense is just so good. I get that I might be a little bit of a homer in that aspect, but offenses are averaging 3.5 yards per attempt rushing against this Cleveland Browns defense. And teams are averaging 4.6 yards per pass attempt, which is second best in the league, near the Ravens. And, I just believe that maybe Deshaun Watson comes back. He does have a chance of just looking good and just kind of turning it around. Those chances are a little bit better than the Jags defense just magically getting all the way better from worst to first. And Trevor Lawrence turning it around, because that's not a given at this point. So that's why
I will say just watch out for the Jags. They've been my dark horse this year. I think they're going to stay my dark horse. It's either them. I mean, I just don't really like the Ravens that much.
Yeah,
I get why people rank them where they are.
Their defense is really good.
My problem with the Ravens is they forget that they're playing a football game until the second half every single game they play.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating to watch. So, but I would say the Jags at number 10 instead of the Browns. That's my only criticism in there.
Okay. The also weird thing about the Jags is they just went on this trip to London. They're apparently have that figured out. I'll say that. Yeah, it appears that they have that travel situation, because even on the way back, they looked fine. They ended up winning. I just think, I don't know. I want to see them in like a normal middle of the season perform well coming off of this trip before I kind of put them into the top 10, which brings us, we're right on time, guys. Good job out of us. Into our bottom five.
I don't get to ramble on and put us over.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miles Francis. I got too excited. Go ahead.
I will keep it very brief. The Chiefs, I kind of agree with you. I really didn't want to put them there, but it's hard to argue when they're 5-1 and the Super Bowl defending Super Bowl champions. I don't really have any problem with the Ravens, Bengals, or the Seahawks. I do think the Browns you have a little bit overrated. I think that this last week really was a best case scenario for them. They have a very strong defense, and they lost 2 of their best. San Francisco lost 2 of their best weapons going against a very strong defense. That really lets you focus on the remaining targets. I think that win is hella impressive. Don't get me wrong, but I also think it's circumstantial. And for that reason, I think the Browns are too high. With that said, they're definitely above the Jaguars. The Cowboys, I get your point with the Dak situation, though. It's just he's too much of a wild card. He hasn't proven that he can keep his head together for multiple games in a row, which is literally what the playoffs is. The only other team I would bring up would be the Rams, and it's because they are 3-3 despite having not having Cooper Kupp. Until this last week. I feel like they have a lot of upside moving forward the rest of the season.
But they have Puka Nacua.
They had Puka this whole time. They still have Puka, and now they have Kupp.
Rams defense, kind of playing like sort of like maybe the 10th best defense in the league in terms of the running side of things, the passing side of things. The Rams defense, again, kind of in that 10 range. Let me see if I got that right. 10-ish for passing. And they're more middle tier. They average 4.3 yards per carry on defense against the run. So kind of middle tier defensively on that side of things. But yeah, they're an offense that could really take it to the limit. What I've seen is a massive hole in their game is when they have a good pass or a good rush, pass rush, they kind of crumble. Their offensive line can't quite handle a good pass rush, and Stafford can just disappear for a half or even like 3/4 of a game. That's my real main concern with the Rams. I would definitely put the Browns ahead of them. My main pushback against your take on that, Miles, is that you said it was worst case scenario for the 49ers.
I would argue best case scenario for the Browns a defensive-minded team when they lose two of their like highest offensive weapons.
Okay, fair, right? Definitely helped the Browns win. 49ers, Deebo Samuel, I would argue, is their number 2 wide receiver behind Brandon Ayuk. Christian McCaffrey, of course, going down, definitely their number 1 guy in terms of a weapon offensively. However, if you look on the other side of the ball for the Cleveland Browns, how perfect is this for the 49ers defense that is also a defensively minded team when PJ Walker gets signed off the practice squad, XFL quarterback, goes in for $260 million man Deshaun Watson, who's got a sore shoulder. Nick Chubb's out. Their best offensive weapon for the Browns, out for the season. Joel Bitonio, I know a lot of people don't know offense.
All of those things happened prior to this game. That was something that the Browns have now had the opportunity to practice and plan for. This happened to the 49ers live. Like, this was like first quarter for McCaffrey.
Joel Bitonio is one of the best offensive guards in the league. They've already lost Wyatt Teller. The Browns were not in. David Njoku gets his face melted off. Go ahead, Andrew. What were you going to say?
At a barbecue.
There's one thing that we're forgetting about right here in the game of football: physicality. This is a skill. It's like special teams, offense, defense, physicality. The fact that they're knocking out these players, it's not, it's luck. It's, dude, they were more physical. They knocked them out, and they finished the fight. Once again, I go back to 2000 Ravens. This is a team that went into the playoffs in a wild card, knocked out Steve McNair, took out Rich Gannon the next game, which is why you can't fall on the quarterback all your weight because Tony Siragusa broke his shoulder. But, this is part of the game. Like, these defenses that come in every 20 years or so are so physical, they will just change a game, knocking players out, maybe even hurting them, making them limited. I mean, it's a skill. I consider it top 10 skill.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that out loud, but well put, Andrew, basically saying when you got Myles Garrett and Grant Delpit and Martin Emerson, and Garrett Wilson flying around the field, hitting people hard. They've got a really big, thick interior line. People are going to get hurt, and it is, a part of the game. It's not necessarily saying the Browns are dirty or anything, but they're going to knock a lot of people off. They're going to knock a lot of people out of the game. Miles, so glad I definitely remembered to go to you to end this segment. That was a great conversation. I do appreciate you. Are y'all ready to go to the bottom 5 or what? This is really what the people want to hear. Who's getting the first over?
5.
Who's getting Caleb Williams, baby? That's who we're about to talk about. Anthony Ramos. I'm going to start today with number 5, 5th worst team, and then I'm going to end with the worst today. My 5th worst team in the NFL, the Denver Broncos. What's the only redeeming quality about this team so far this season has been the offense. They went up against the Chiefs defense, which is granted, it's a good defense, but Russell Wilson had his worst game of the season. Wasn't bad enough for me to bump him lower down this list or higher up on this list, depending on which way you want to look at it. Worst pass defense, worst run defense in the NFL by virtually every metric, which is startling. Number 4th worst team on the list, is the Panthers. They're 0-6. They don't have a win yet. But they look like they have a little bit going. Maybe Jonathan Mingo gets it in. Adam Thielen looks incredible. The defense isn't horrible. And they're just not, they don't have a feel of a team that's not going to win at least 3 games this season. Hoping Bryce Young kind of starts to figure it out. Number 3 worst team. This was my worst ranked team last week. The New England Patriots. The New England Patriots, they can stop the run on defense. So there's that. So they have a redeeming quality, and they have Bill Belichick as their head coach. And I just think Bill Belichick, even though the team sucks, is just going to figure out ways to win this season, kind of like he did against the Jets already. He's going to run into some matchups that he's going to be able to figure out defensively, and that's going to keep him in outside of the worst team in the league. Number 2 worst team in the league, the Giants, the New York Football Giants. Let me riddle you this, guys. Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. Who has the most yards per attempt passing? Dan, Zach, or Mac? If you think it's Mac, raise your hand. If you think it's Zach, most yards per attempt, raise your hand. If you think it is Daniel Jones, raise your hand. Okay. Daniel Jones, the worst out of that stat. Mac Jones and Zach Wilson are tied in that stat.
Wow. Nice.
Okay.
So we weren't wrong.
To tell you how bad Mac Jones has played this year. But Daniel Jones somehow has been even worse. Defense hasn't played well. Brian Daboll starting to look like the most overrated head coach coming into this season, and maybe the most overrated head coach that we have seen in a while in the NFL. A lot of narratives went on this offseason that are kind of very quickly being proved wrong. Which brings me to my number last, the Bears.
The Bears.
Yeah.
The only good part about their team is riding on their starting quarterback's right thumb. And what did we see? That thumb just kind of plippity-plop out of place. And that's why I have them last on the list. I'll send it to Andrew first. What do you think, buddy? I have Bears worst, then Giants, then Patriots, Panthers, and Broncos.
I think the Patriots are the second worst team in the league. They might get one more win this year, and that's when they play Zach Wilson again. If Zach Wilson's playing, it's not Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
If you can't beat the Raiders after knocking out Jimmy G and then not even covering because your own idiot quarterback gets a safety, the game is past Belichick. I'm sorry. This team is terrible. They can't pass. Special team sucks. The defense is solid, I guess. But other than that, I'm out on the Patriots.
Well, their running defense are defense. And it was, I had them listed where you had them listed until I started digging into the stats defensively for the Giants. They're giving up 5.1 yards per carry on defense as far as like running the ball goes, which is 3rd worst in the NFL. Yards per attempt passing, they are 5th worst in the NFL, 7.3. The Broncos leading that stat, 8.2 for comparison. So the defensive stats, where the Patriots are kind of middle tier in terms of passing defense and top tier in running defense, I think they're going to run into a few more wins than the Giants, who really just have no redeeming qualities at the moment other than Saquon coming back, and that didn't seem to help that much. Andrew, is that all?
Yeah, that's all. That's all I had.
Hell yeah. Anthony Ramos?
Where do you have the Cardinals?
Not in the bottom 5. Listen, that offense has looked all right. Their Josh Dobbs looks, pretty.
Like he has no wind resistance?
Yeah, because guy's got no hair.
Well, look, the reason why I asked is because the Giants have one win. The Cardinals. And the Cardinals are 1-5 along with the Giants. In my personal opinion, the Cardinals are worse than the Giants.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
That being said,
think that the improvements have been more in the ways of the Cardinals, but not enough for me to be convinced that the Giants are worse.
Can I cut in real quick and just say that it definitely is ranked the Arizona Cardinals, Anthony's audio quality, and then the New York Giants.
Anthony, whenever you start talking, it like kicks you out, so we can't hear you to start your sentences. Is what Miles is talking about. We can hear what you're saying though. You sound fine.
Oh, it's fine. I don't really give a shit. It's not worth hearing what I got to say anyway. But yeah. But I don't know. I feel like the Cardinals should be in discussion for worst team in the NFL. Definitely in the top 5 worst. That's a little strange that they're not in there. Now, with the Bears, yes, I do agree that the Bears are the worst team in the NFL. I think the Panthers might be the second worst in the NFL because there's just nothing redeeming about the Panthers whatsoever, except for maybe Adam Thielen. And even that is like, corn and shit. It's really not anything worth talking about. So I don't really see the value in the Cardinals in the Cardinals, the Panthers, or the Bears. I think it would be Bears, Panthers, and then Cardinals, then Giants.
Okay. So the Cardinals, they're just less bad across the board compared to a lot of these teams. They're like 10th defensively and against the pass and against the run. Josh Dobbs is just marginally better than like Mac Jones. He's marginally better than Daniel Jones is playing currently. He's just marginally. They're just a little bit better than we thought. They're just a little bit more average than we thought they were going into the season.
Their games are competitive for the most part until they're just not like straight shitting down their leg like Daniel Jones or Mac Jones.
Yeah, and they're looking like a professional football team against these and they've lost a lot of games this year, but they've lost to a lot of good teams. And eventually it's going to come back around. Andrew, what do you think? My bottom 5.
Oh, Miles next.
Oh, Miles, what do you think? Bottom 5.
He keeps trying to skip you, Miles. He doesn't want to hear what you got to say.
Oh, you're good, dude. I mostly agree. There's a couple places. I feel like it's weird. I even defended them last week, and I don't know why. They're just having a forgettable season. But the Carolina Panthers are winless, and we still have them at 4. Going with like just worst teams, I feel like it's hard to say there's a lot worse than them right now. I kind of agree with Chicago, though they're now playing with injuries, which maybe it looked like they were showing a little bit of promise last week when they played the Commanders, who I thought were going to just tank this week and held out a win. New England, also bad. It's just there's a lot of there's a really big separation this year between the best teams and the worst teams. Like they're like almost like playing in 2 different leagues, arguably to the point that if we did this like European football or soccer, if you will, how you literally promote and demote into different leagues, it feels there's like good 6-8 teams at the bottom here, including the Cardinals, Anthony's point, if we go that wide, that should just be playing in a lesser league than teams like the Lions and the Dolphins.
Yeah, we should really start relegating these. I feel like we should force the owner to sell their team to like an XFL team, and like the XFL branded team gets plunged into the NFL, but they inherit like the roster and the coaching staff and everything. I think that's how you do it. You make these owners give up their teams if they suck.
Jamie, if that happened, you and me would not have a favorite NFL team right now. The fucking Lions, the Lions and the Chargers would have been out a long time ago. It would not have.
Bro, what are you talking about? I'm gonna be a Seattle's Dragons fan. That's my NFL team.
I'm gonna be Arlington Renegades fan at that point. Then.
Hell yeah!
Happy Sober October, by the way, Anthony.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You see, being a Chargers fan, it's really hard to fucking be sober, especially when football season's going on. Out of football season is still hard too, but it's just not possible.
All right, and that has been our power ranking show. Please leave a like, leave a comment, leave your power rankings, who you think is right, who you think is wrong. Please subscribe to the channel. My name is Jamie Jakes, and good night.